Hello, be sure to get through the story to the end and in the comments write your opinion, and subscribe to the channel, put a like. I used to think I had everything figured out. My life, my marriage, my family. Megan and I had built a stable home together. I had a solid job that provided financial security, and she stayed at home taking care of our 3 kids. Everything seemed perfect. It wasn't a fairy tale, but it was as close to one as I thought we'd get. The routine was easy to follow, the kids were healthy, and we made enough money to cover our bills and even go on a nice vacation now and then. Our lives had a rhythm, and I thought that was all we needed to stay happy. But something shifted, slowly at first, so subtly that I almost missed it. It wasn't until Emma, our youngest, turned 3 that I started noticing little changes in Megan. She'd always been a hands-on mom. Attentive, nurturing, there for every school event, every playdate, every scraped knee. But something about that 3rd year in Emma's life was different. It's like Megan's attention was slowly drifting somewhere else. At first, it was small, almost unnoticeable. I'd get home from work, and the house would be quiet. Too quiet. The kids were usually in their rooms playing or watching TV, but there was no sound of Megan in the kitchen, no chattering, no laughter, no busying about like usual. I chalked it up to exhaustion. After all, we had 3 kids under the age of 10. I told myself that she was just tired, that maybe she needed some alone time. But when I'd check in on her, I'd find her in a room, zoning out, scrolling through her phone or watching a random TV show, something I'd never seen her do before. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I tried to brush it off. But as the weeks went by, it started to become a pattern. Megan would leave the kids alone for hours. Sometimes it was running errands, sometimes it was meeting up with friends. At first, I told myself she deserved a break, that it wasn't a big deal. But the more it happened, the more I started questioning her priorities. She would leave them with the older kids, telling them to keep an eye on the little ones. But they were kids themselves. Emma, who was still so young, didn't understand. I started wondering, was this the mother I had married? The woman who once told me that she couldn't wait to stay home with our kids, to raise them, to be there for every moment? I tried talking to her about it. At first, I thought maybe I was overreacting, but I couldn't ignore what I was seeing. One afternoon, I walked in from work, and the house was eerily quiet again. I went to the backyard, and there she was, sitting on the deck, a cup of coffee in her hands, her eyes glazed over. The kids were inside. The baby monitor was on, but I hadn't seen her interact with them all afternoon. I asked her what was going on, and she shrugged. "I'm just taking a break," she said casually. "It's been a long day." I felt this sick feeling in my stomach, a knot that wouldn't loosen. Something about it didn't feel right. I had worked hard all day and then come home to this. She was distant, distracted, and it wasn't just that afternoon. It was becoming a pattern. Nights when I'd come home, the kids running around on their own, sometimes making their own meals, and Megan would be upstairs, locked in her room or in the bathroom, zoning out. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was avoiding me, avoiding the kids. It was as if she was mentally checked out of the life we had built. But when I brought it up, she would just laugh and tell me I was worrying too much. "David, you're overthinking everything. The kids are fine. They're not babies anymore," she'd say, rolling her eyes. "They can take care of themselves. Just relax." But it wasn't just about the kids, it was about us. It felt like the distance between us was growing wider. Megan's behavior didn't make sense to me. The more I tried to reach out to her, the more she pulled away. Then came the conversation about the girls' trip to Hawaii. She casually mentioned it one evening, sitting at the kitchen table with her phone in hand, planning her trip with her friends. "I'm going to Hawaii with the girls next month," she said nonchalantly, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. I froze, my heart skipping a beat. "Wait, what?" I asked, not sure if I had heard her correctly. "Yeah," she said, not looking up from her phone. "Just a girls' trip. It's been ages since I've done something for myself. I really need this, David." I didn't know what to say at first. Megan had never gone away for an extended period of time without me and the kids. I tried to hide my concern, but it wasn't easy. I wanted to tell her that leaving now, with everything going on, wasn't a good idea. I was already feeling like the weight of everything was on me. working full-time, managing the kids, and trying to hold it all together. And she wanted to take a vacation without even considering how it would affect the family. I was worried. Couldn't help it. "Megan, are you sure this is a good time?" I asked, my voice cracking with frustration. "You've been gone more and more lately, and now you want to leave for a week?" She didn't take my concerns seriously. "It's just a week, David. I haven't had time off in forever. You'll be fine." I could feel my chest tighten. "I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about the kids. You've been leaving them alone so much lately. I don't think you understand what's at stake here." Her response was dismissive, as if my concerns were irrelevant. She didn't even bother to engage in the conversation any longer. "You're overreacting," she said. "You always do this. Everything will be fine. It's just a vacation, David." But it wasn't just a vacation. It was her way of avoiding reality. She had already checked out emotionally, and now she was physically distancing herself as well. I knew it. I could feel it in my bones. But I wasn't sure what to do about it. Megan was steadfast in her decision, and I was left questioning how far I had fallen from the person I thought I knew. As she booked the trip, I felt a sense of helplessness. Something deep inside me knew this wasn't just about a getaway. Megan had changed, and I wasn't sure who she was anymore. But I also knew I couldn't let her leave for Hawaii and ignore my concerns. It wasn't just about her anymore, it was about our kids, our family. As the days passed, I became more and more restless. I tried to talk to Megan again about her trip, but she was so set on going that it seemed like my concerns didn't even register with her anymore. She'd brush me off, tell me I was being controlling or that I just didn't understand how hard she had been working to keep everything together. But I didn't see it that way. I wasn't mad because she wanted to take a trip. I understood the need for a break. But it wasn't just about the trip. It was about everything leading up to it. The way she had been neglecting the kids, the way she had been absent from our lives. The last straw came when she casually mentioned that she had already booked the flight and secured accommodations. I sat there stunned. I had tried to get through to her. I had voiced my concerns, but it was as if she was hearing me, but not listening. The more I thought about it, the more my frustration bubbled up inside me. I wasn't just angry at her for leaving. I was angry at myself for not seeing the warning signs earlier. Megan had checked out long before this trip was even a thought in her mind. Her neglect had been a slow burn, but now it was a fire consuming everything in its path. And I had done nothing to stop it. I couldn't let it continue. The thought of her leaving for a week, knowing she had been ignoring our children's needs for so long, was too much to bear. I had to take control of the situation, no matter how difficult it would be. The moment Megan left for her trip, I knew I had to act fast. I wasn't going to sit idly by while she got to escape from her responsibilities. I needed to protect the kids, and I couldn't count on her to do it. That's when I made the decision to hire a nanny. Someone reliable, someone who would provide the stability that Megan was failing to give. I didn't want the kids to feel abandoned, especially not after everything they had already been through. But that was just the beginning. I knew I had to do more. Megan's behavior wasn't just a series of bad decisions. It was a pattern, a disregard for her responsibilities as a mother. I felt the need to document everything, to make sure that when it came time to address this, I had all the evidence I needed. So I started keeping track. I noted the times she had left the kids unsupervised, the way she dismissed my concerns, the way she was always quick to leave but never quick to come back. I started collecting phone records, texts, anything I could use if it came to a legal battle. I wasn't sure if things would escalate that far, but I couldn't take the risk of letting Megan continue down this path without any consequences. I froze our joint bank accounts, something I had never thought I would do. It felt like a betrayal in itself, but at the same time, I felt like it was the only way to regain some control. I couldn't keep funding her trip while she neglected the family that was supposed to come first. The night Megan left for Hawaii, I sat at home with the kids, trying to keep everything as normal as possible. But inside, my mind was racing. I knew what I had to do next, and I couldn't afford to wait any longer. That night, I filed for emergency custody. It wasn't something I took lightly. I knew how much it would hurt Megan to learn that I was taking such drastic steps. But I also knew that I couldn't just let things continue the way they were. The children's well-being had to come first, and I couldn't trust Megan to put them before her own desires. The next few days felt like a blur. I had hired the nanny, filed the paperwork, and was doing everything I could to protect the kids from the chaos Megan was creating. I wanted to believe it wasn't as bad as it seemed, but deep down, I knew it was. Megan had been so wrapped up in her own life that she couldn't see the damage she was doing. When Megan returned from her trip, she was furious. I could see it in her eyes the moment she stepped through the door. She had expected everything to go back to normal, but that wasn't going to happen. Not this time. "You've got some nerve, David," she said, her voice cold as she slammed her suitcase onto the floor. "What the hell is all this about? The nanny? The accounts? What did you do?" I stayed calm, even though my insides were in turmoil. "I did what I had to do, Megan. The kids need stability. I can't trust you to provide that right now." Her eyes flashed with anger. "What? You think you can just take over like this? You think you can dictate what's best for me and the kids?" I could feel the tension building, but I stood my ground. "You've been absent, Megan. You've been leaving the kids alone for hours, and I've had enough. You've made it clear that you don't care about the family the way I do. So I'm taking action. I'm doing what's best for them, even if it means I have to make decisions you don't like." Her face turned red with fury. "This is insane. I can't believe you're doing this. You're acting like I'm a terrible mother. You don't know what it's like to be stuck in this house day in and day out, taking care of everything." I could see the walls she had built around herself crumbling. But there was no turning back now. "I'm not saying you're a terrible mother, Megan, but you've been neglecting the kids. You've been neglecting me. You've been neglecting this family. And I can't let it continue." Her anger turned to confusion, then desperation. "I didn't mean for it to happen like this," she said, her voice softer now. "I just needed a break. I needed to breathe. I didn't know how bad things had gotten. I didn't know if she was being honest or if she was just trying to manipulate me. Either way, I wasn't buying it. It's too late for apologies, Megan. The damage is done. The kids need consistency, and I'm going to make sure they get it." The next few weeks were a whirlwind. The legal proceedings began almost immediately, and I found myself embroiled in a battle that I hadn't anticipated. Megan fought back fiercely, but I had all the evidence I needed. I presented phone logs showing the times she had left the kids alone, the things she had dismissed as overreactions. I showed the judge the letter she had written, the one where she had made excuses for her neglect. And when the children were asked who they wanted to live with, they chose me without hesitation. It wasn't easy. The entire process was draining, and there were moments when I wasn't sure I was doing the right thing. But when the judge ruled in my favor, granting me full custody and only allowing Megan limited supervised visitation, I knew it was the right call. The kids were safe. They were stable. And that was all that mattered. Megan was crushed. She couldn't believe how quickly everything had fallen apart. She thought she could go on living her life without any consequences. But reality hit her hard. She was left with nothing. No job, no stability, and no family. She reached out to me, begging for forgiveness, promising to change, to be a better mother and wife. But I was resolute. "You made your choice when you chose freedom over your family," I said, my voice cold and firm. "I'm not going to let you back in. You need to face the consequences of your actions." She tried to argue, but I didn't listen. I knew what had to be done, and I wasn't going to let her pull me back into the mess she had created. Megan had made her bed, and now it was time for her to lie in it. The aftermath of the custody battle was just the beginning of what felt like a new life. One I hadn't expected but was determined to navigate with as much strength as I could muster. The kids, thank God, were adjusting well. They seemed happier with the routine we'd established. The nanny had been a godsend. I never thought I'd be the type of parent to rely on someone else to care for my children. But in those early weeks, she became more than just a caretaker. She became their anchor. The kids started to thrive again. They were laughing, playing, and finding joy in the simple things that had once been clouded by tension and neglect. I don't think Megan fully understood what she had lost. It wasn't just her relationship with me that was gone. It was the bond she once had with the kids, the family she had helped to create. Even when she called to beg for a chance to reconcile, to make things right, I couldn't bring myself to listen. Her voice was laced with desperation, but I knew better. Couldn't go back. I had seen what was happening behind the scenes for too long, and I couldn't ignore the hurt she had caused. It didn't matter how many times she promised to be different, to be better. The trust was broken, and it couldn't be fixed with empty words. I had grown resentful over the past few years, silently watching as Megan slowly slipped away. The woman I had married, the woman I had built my life around, was no longer the person I saw before me. It wasn't just the neglect, the avoidance of her responsibilities. It was the emotional distance, the way she had started to put her own needs above the family's. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. There had been so many moments, so many signs, that I had ignored in favor of keeping the peace. But that peace was an illusion. And now, in the aftermath of the legal battle, I finally understood that. I had thought the hardest part would be over once the kids and I settled into our new life. But as the weeks turned into months, it became clear that Megan wasn't going to fade into the background as easily as I had hoped. She started showing up unannounced, calling at odd hours, trying to convince me to talk things through for the sake of the kids. But each time I shut her down. I wasn't doing this for her. I was doing this for us, the kids and me. We had already suffered enough because of her behavior, and I wasn't going to let her drag us back into that turmoil. Megan's attempts to win me over grew more frantic. She started sending messages, long apologies, texts filled with promises of change. But they all felt hollow. She would say she was working on herself, that she had finally seen the light. But there was no sincerity behind her words. I had already seen who she was, and I wasn't willing to let her back into our lives to hurt us again. It was one late afternoon, about 6 weeks after the custody hearing, when Megan showed up at the house again. I was in the kitchen making dinner for the kids. They were in the living room, playing with their toys, unaware of what was happening. I heard the knock on the door, the hesitant tap-tap-tap that I had come to associate with her. I didn't need to ask who it was. I opened the door to find her standing there, her eyes red from crying. She looked worn out, like someone who hadn't slept in days. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes baggy, as though she had given up on even trying to present herself in the way she once did. For a moment, I felt a pang of sympathy. She looked broken, but then I remembered everything that had led to this moment. "Megan," I said, my voice steady, though I could feel the anger building inside me. "What are you doing here?" She didn't answer right away. She just stood there, looking at me with a mixture of shame and desperation. "David, please. I know I've messed up. I've lost everything. I've lost you and I've lost the kids. But I swear, I'm not the same person anymore. I've been getting help. I've been going to therapy. I'm trying to change." She looked down, then back at me. "Please, I want to fix things. I want to be a mother again, a wife again." I let the silence stretch between us. She was pleading with me, but I could see through her act. It was the same story, the same excuses. I had heard it all before. "You don't get it, do you?" I finally asked. My voice was colder than I intended. "It's not about fixing things, Megan. It's about trust. And you've destroyed that. You chose to walk away from this family, and now you want to come back as if nothing happened." "I never meant to hurt anyone," she whispered. "I swear I didn't, but I know I have. I know what I did, and I'm sorry. Please, David, please, let me try to fix this." I shook my head. "It's too late for that." Her face crumpled, and she looked as if she were going to collapse right there on the doorstep. But I wasn't moved. "Megan," I said softly, "you've made your choices. You chose freedom over responsibility. You chose your own desires over your family. And I'm not going to let you back into our lives to tear it apart again. The kids are happy. We're happy. You had your chance and you blew it." Her tears flowed freely now, but I stood firm. This wasn't about my feelings anymore. This wasn't even about her. This was about the future I was building with the kids. I closed the door gently, but I didn't feel a sense of relief. Not yet, at least. I knew Megan wasn't going to give up easily. Her pride, her guilt, and her desperation would drive her to try again. But I was prepared this time. I wasn't going to let her break what I had built. I had given her a chance, and she had thrown it away. There was no going back. The next few weeks were tense, but I kept moving forward. Megan's visits became less frequent, though she still sent occasional texts or left messages. Each time I ignored them. I refused to give her a platform to manipulate me. The kids, thankfully, were none the wiser. They were too young to understand the full weight of what had happened, but I could see how they thrived in the peace that had replaced the chaos of the past year. They were growing stronger, happier, and they no longer feared what would happen when Megan would come home late or disappear for days on end. I wasn't sure how this story would end, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't going to let Megan drag me down again. I had learned too much about who she really was, about how far she was willing to go to protect herself at the expense of everyone around her. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. The weeks following Megan's failed attempt to re-enter our lives were the hardest, but also the most transformative. I could feel the weight lifting from my shoulders, but at the same time, the emptiness that came with the loss of a once-shared life hung over me. The kids were thriving, and that was all that mattered. But I couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in my chest, the one that kept telling me that there was still more to come. Megan wasn't the type to give up easily, and I knew that it wouldn't be long before she found a way to try to force her way back into our lives. But I didn't know how or how much longer I could keep it together. There were days when I'd catch myself staring at the empty spot on the couch where she used to sit, or hear a song on the radio that we once loved, and for a split second, I'd let myself feel the loss. It wasn't that I didn't still love her. At least I thought I did, but it was different now. The love I felt wasn't enough to erase the hurt, the neglect, the manipulation that had crept into our lives. It wasn't even close. I had always prided myself on being a provider, a protector. But after everything that happened, I realized that I had been so focused on keeping the family together, keeping the peace, that I had allowed things to deteriorate without ever fully seeing it coming. Megan had slowly disconnected herself from us, and by the time I noticed, it was too late to go back. The woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew, was no longer there. I was walking a tightrope now, doing my best to be both mother and father to the kids while also managing my own pain and frustration. It wasn't easy. There were moments when I doubted myself, when I wondered if I had made the right decision. But every time I looked at the kids, every time I saw the peace in their faces that had been absent for so long, I knew I couldn't go back. Megan kept trying in her own way. She started sending messages again, though they were subtler this time. Just a line or two, a reminder of how much she cared, how much she missed the kids. But every message felt like a trap, a way to worm her way back in. And the more she reached out, the more I distanced myself. I couldn't afford to make the mistake of letting her back in. I had already given her that chance, and she had chosen freedom over us. She had walked away, and now she had to face the consequences. One afternoon, about 2 months after the custody ruling, I was sitting in the living room when my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but something inside me told me I needed to pick it up. David. The voice on the other end was shaky. Took me a moment to place it, but then it hit me, Megan. Megan, what do you want? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, but I could feel the old anger beginning to rise again. I need your help, she said, her voice sounding small, almost broken. I've lost everything, David. I've lost the kids. I've lost you. I can't do this alone. For a second, I was thrown. It was the first time I had heard that tone in her voice in a long time, the tone of someone who was truly desperate, not just trying to manipulate the situation. I don't think you understand, I said, my words sharp. You made your choices, Megan. You walked away. I don't know how many times I have to say this, but I'm done. I'm done trying to fix what you broke. I'm done with the lies. She was silent for a moment, and I could almost hear her trying to find the words. Please, she finally said, her voice breaking. I've been to therapy. I'm getting help. I'm trying to be better. I can't fix the past, but I want to try to be there for the kids. I want to be their mother again. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. Part of me, maybe a small part, the part that still cared for her, wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that she had changed, that she had seen the damage she had done. But the other part of me, the part that had been watching for months as she let us all down, knew better. She had used every excuse under the sun to justify her actions. And now, when everything had been taken from her, she was trying to play the victim. "I don't think you can be the mother you want to be, Megan," I said, my voice steady but firm. "Not right now. You can't just come back into our lives like nothing happened. You don't get to make promises that you've already broken." There was another long pause. I could hear her breathing heavily, as if she was trying to steady herself. "I'm not asking for everything, David. Just a chance to see the kids. Just a chance to show them that I'm trying to make things right. I don't know what else to do. Please." The plea in her voice tugged at something deep inside me. For a moment, I let myself picture the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had stood beside me through everything, who had once made me feel like we were unstoppable. But that wasn't the woman on the other end of the line now. That woman had disappeared a long time ago, replaced by someone who had put herself first, someone who had failed us all. "I don't know if I can do that, Megan," I said quietly. "The kids need more than promises. They need consistency. They need stability. And I'm not sure you can give them that right now." She was quiet for a long time, and I knew I had crushed her hopes with those words. But it was the truth, and I couldn't lie to her anymore. "I've made my choice, Megan," I said, my voice softer now but still firm. "And I'm not going back. I'm protecting my family. I'm protecting the kids. And that means keeping them away from this chaos." The silence on the other end of the line stretched, long and painful. "I understand," she said finally, her voice so small it was almost a whisper. "I'll never forgive myself for what I've done." "You'll have to live with that," I said, my heart heavy. "I just hope one day you'll understand that this isn't just about you anymore. This is about the kids. And I'm not going to let you destroy them too." I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. The conversation had taken everything out of me, and for a moment, I felt the weight of it all, of everything that had happened. Megan wasn't going to change, and I had to accept that. The next few days were quieter. Megan's attempts to reach out stopped, and for a while, I thought maybe she was finally starting to accept the reality of the situation. But I knew she wasn't done. Megan would never let go that easily, but I had already made my peace. The kids and I were moving forward, and I wasn't going to let her pull us back into the mess she had created. The weeks that followed felt like an endless back and forth between relief and constant vigilance. Megan had retreated, at least for the moment, and the peace in our home, my home, felt more fragile than ever. I'd like to say I was confident in my decision, that I had all the answers, but the truth is I didn't. There were nights when I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had done the right thing. I wasn't sure if I was protecting the kids or just keeping them from a relationship they needed to have with their mother. Maybe both. But the one thing I was sure of was that I couldn't let the past repeat itself. I couldn't go back to the way things had been. I was slowly starting to find myself again. The weight of years spent in emotional limbo, constantly questioning what was real, was beginning to lift. I was no longer that man who had been afraid to see the truth. I had seen it, faced it, and now I was ready to move forward. The kids were adjusting. They had moments of sadness when they missed their mother, but they were happy. They were safe. And that was enough. But Megan wasn't done. I had a feeling that the storm wasn't over yet. And sure enough, I was right. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I got the call. I was at work, sitting at my desk, trying to focus on a report, when my phone rang. The number was blocked, and for a moment I hesitated. I had been avoiding her calls for months now, but something in me told me this wasn't just another attempt to reconnect. It was different. It was more desperate. I picked up the phone, bracing myself. "David, it's Megan." Her voice sounded so distant, so unlike the woman I had once known. It was as if the Megan who had walked out of our lives had been replaced with someone else. Someone who was so broken that I could hardly recognize her. "What do you want?" I asked, trying to keep my tone as neutral as possible, though I could feel my heart rate quicken. I don't know where to start, she said, her voice shaking. I don't know if you're going to want to hear this, but I need you to listen. I leaned back in my chair, already sensing where this was headed. Go ahead, I said, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to hear it. I've been going through some things, she began, her voice faltering. Things I've been trying to run away from, and I realized I've hurt everyone I've ever loved, and I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try. I need to try, David. For the kids, for me, for you. I want to make things right. I sat there, staring at my phone. Part of me wanted to hang up. The part of me that had moved on, the part of me that had built a life without her in it. But then there was that other part of me, the part that had once cared for her, that still wanted to believe in the woman she was when we first met. What's going on, Megan? I asked, my voice quieter now, more guarded. What's changed? She was silent for a moment. I'm in trouble, David. I don't know what to do. I'm in debt. I can't make ends meet, and I've lost everything. And I know I'm to blame for all of it. But I'm not asking for pity. I'm asking for help. I swallowed hard. The Megan I knew, the one who had always been the strong one, the one who had taken care of everything, was gone. And in her place was this broken woman, this shell of who she had been, desperate for a lifeline. I don't know what to say, I said, my voice distant. You didn't just lose everything, Megan. You walked away from this family. You chose yourself over us. And now you want me to fix it? I can't do that. I won't. I could hear her choking back tears. I don't expect you to fix it, David. I'm not asking for you to fix anything. I just need help. I need help with the kids. I need to be there for them. I don't want them to grow up thinking I abandoned them. I don't want them to think I didn't care. The pain in her voice caught me off guard. For a second, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered everything that had led us here. Her neglect, her lies, her refusal to take responsibility. It was all too much to just sweep under the rug. I don't think you understand what you've done, I said, my words coming out slowly, deliberately. You've already hurt the kids by choosing this. They've been through enough. You can't just come back into their lives whenever it's convenient for you. It doesn't work that way. There was a long pause. I could feel the tension building, the weight of the moment settling on my shoulders. Please, she finally whispered. I don't know what to do. I don't have anyone else. And I've ruined everything. I can't help you, Megan, I said, my voice firm now. You need to fix this on your own. You need to get your life together. You need to show the kids that you can be responsible. I'm not going to bail you out. I can't. Another silence. She didn't say anything, and I knew the conversation was over. I had said everything I needed to say. I had drawn the line in the sand, and I wasn't going to let her cross it. I'll figure it out, she said, her voice barely audible. I just thought you should know that I'm sorry. I'm really sorry for everything. I know, I said, my voice softening for a moment, but that was all I could give her. The truth was, Megan had done too much damage for an apology to mean anything anymore. I'm hanging up now, I said, my finger already hovering over the button. Take care of yourself, Megan. And with that, I ended the call. The emptiness that followed felt like a weight in my chest. I didn't feel relief. I didn't feel anger. I just felt numb. I had made my choice, and now I had to live with it. Over the next few weeks, Megan's calls became less frequent, and I began to hope that she was finally starting to accept that this was the end of the road. The kids continued to flourish, and I worked on building a life for us that didn't revolve around her mistakes. Slowly, the remnants of our old life began to fade, replaced by something new, something stable, something real. But it wasn't over. Megan kept trying, in her own way, to get back into our lives. She called the kids occasionally, sent them birthday cards, even tried to visit, though I never allowed it. I was resolute in my decision. I wasn't going to let her back into our lives to tear it all apart again. A few months later, I received the divorce papers. I knew it was coming, but I didn't feel the sense of finality I thought I would. I wasn't angry, and I wasn't sad. It was just another step in the process. As I signed the papers, I realized something. This wasn't just about Megan anymore. It was about me, and it was about my kids. The past was behind us, and we were moving forward. The moment I handed the papers back to the lawyer, I felt free. And for the first time in a long time, I could breathe again. The weight of the past had lifted, and I was finally free to rebuild.